Shedeur Sanders dropping in the draft could be a nightmare scenario for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and let me tell you why. I don't want to draft a quarterback with our first-round pick at all. Anybody. I want to go receiver, defensive back, defensive tackle, defensive tackle. Now, let me tell you why this is going to be a nightmare for the Pittsburgh Steelers if Shedeur Sanders drops in the draft to their laps. It could screw up that entire plan. They could be thinking to themselves, if Justin Fields leaves and signs somewhere else, and you only have Russell Wilson as your quarterback, and Sam Darnold doesn't come to the Steelers, if you're going into the season with Russell Wilson and Shedeur Sanders falls into your lap, drops in the draft, do I think the Steelers take him? Yes, I do. Could I be mad at the Steelers for taking him? No. And you're going to say, you're contradicting yourself. You make videos all the time bashing Shedeur for his play and his leadership. And you're right, I do. And I base that off of one thing, not my feelings. You know, it always turns into you dislike Dion. That's why you criticize his kids. Nothing could be further from the truth. I despise when other humans don't like another person because of their style. If somebody wants to wear a hat backwards or a gold chain, or after they score a touchdown and want to do a dance, all power to you. This is a free country. Have fun. I don't have any problems with Shedeur, the person. I don't have any problems with Shedeur with his hat on backwards, wearing a gold chain. I could care less. I've defended his father for years, 20, 30 years. Literally, defended him my whole life. You don't like the guy because when he picks the ball, if it runs back, he goes like this? Who cares? The father has made the biggest plays in the biggest games when called upon. That's what he does, the father. That's what somebody like Troy Polamalu does. You look at Troy's stats compared to other safeties, and you're like, well, it's not that overwhelming. But when you look at the plays that Troy made, the biggest plays in the biggest games at the biggest times, that's what Dion does. But his kids don't do that. Shedeur hasn't done that. He hasn't been in a major college bowl game once. He lost 4 games in the Pac-10 last year. The Pac-10's horrible. And the BYU game, the bowl game. If you watch Shedeur in that game, running around backwards like Tim Tebow, under pressure, just throws the ball up in the air for a pick. Under pressure again, throws it on the ground, gives it up for a fumble. Gliding out of the pocket, not stepping up into the pocket, like trailing off. A lot of times the sacks that he gets, it's not because of the linemen, it's because of his pocket awareness. He holds onto the ball way too long. And with all that being said, if Shedeur falls in the Pittsburgh Steelers' lap, do I think they should take him? Yes. And that kills me. It throws my whole plan for the draft in the garbage. I want Shedeur to go pick number 1, pick number 2. I want him to go, 1 through 15. I don't want him. I don't want the Pittsburgh Steelers, Art Rooney, and Mike Tomlin, and Omar Khan to sit there and have to make that decision and say to themselves, well, what if we miss on this kid? We missed on Kenny Pickett. I always call him Ryan Pickett. Kenny Pickett. I don't even know his name anymore. Could care less. They missed on Lamar Jackson. They might just say to themselves, we don't want to miss on the next Big Ben. We don't want to miss on the next Lamar Jackson. And our franchise is sinking so fast that they might be desperate and just say, you know what? Here's the pick. Give us Shedeur. I sound so like I'm flip-flopping. I'm contradicting myself. And yes, in a way, I am contradicting myself. But this is where we are with the Pittsburgh Steelers right now. We are in quarterback hell. When free agency starts, Art Rooney himself needs to get on the phone, call Sam Darnold and say, hey, Sam, so far in your career, teams haven't treated you right. They haven't gave you a good offensive coordinator, a good team. The New York Jets, the city wasn't behind you. They've been mistreating you. We want you to be a Pittsburgh Steeler. You're going to come home here. You're going to play another 8 to 10 years. We're going to do everything we can to help you win, to have you play with confidence. The city's going to get behind you. Because if the Steelers go into next season, and let's say they do draft Shedeur Sanders, and let's say Russell Wilson starts the season and he flops, which he will, no doubt about it. And let's say Justin Fields is there and he flops, and you have Shedeur on the bench. Now we have to go through the rookie process again. It's going to set the organization. Okay, let's say Shedeur blossoms in year 2, year 3. It's another 4 or 5 years of just being mediocre. And whose fault is this? Whose shoulders does this all fall on? Mike Tomlin's. These are Mike Tomlin's personnel decisions that have put the organization in this position where if Shedeur Sanders falls into your lap, it causes so much chaos and confusion. I couldn't blame the Steelers for taking Shedeur after I had made video after video going over his play, saying he's not that good. And I'm not just saying I want him to go to the Browns or the Bengals or some other team because I want to destroy that team. I don't want the Steelers to have any more confusion than they already have going into the draft, what they need to do. Shedeur falling in their lap is like an atomic bomb. It's a nuclear bomb. Like, oh my God, what the hell are we going to do now? It almost makes their job 1,000 times more difficult because we could argue this topic 1,000,000 times in a row and nobody knows for sure. But because of the state of the quarterback class and because of the state of the Pittsburgh Steelers not being prepared for Big Ben when he retired, this is what brings us to this decision. Whose fault is that? I want to hear it. I want to hear who runs the show in Pittsburgh. Because when you listen to ESPN, when things are going right, Tomlin is the greatest coach ever. He needs to be in Canton now. If the Steelers fired him, 30 other teams would line up tomorrow and just hand them the checkbook. But when things are going wrong, oh, it's not Tomlin's fault. It's Art Rooney's fault. Steelers organization sucks. They're stuck in 1985. Screw the Steelers. Their fan base is chaotic and neurotic. Mike Tomlin needs to go to Chicago and he'll start his career over with Caleb Williams, the softest, most fragile human being ever drafted to the NFL. I mean, between him and Kenny Pickett, it's close. You know why? I'll give Kenny the nod, not because he was an ex-Steeler, because he didn't paint his fingernails pink. So to me right now, Caleb takes the trophy. But that's a whole different video. God, this is a nightmare. This is really a nightmare when you think about it. I want Ibuka round 1. Top-notch corner. Let all the other teams take Travis Hunter and the kid from Michigan. You can have them. We'll get the elite corner in the second round. And then defensive tackle and defensive tackle. There's so many studs in the defensive tackle class. We're going to get top-notch players. Shedeur falls in your lap. This whole plan goes out the window. What the hell do we do now? I mean, I'm sure the Steelers going into this will have every scenario on paper what they should do. But you could argue this for 100 years. Shedeur, no major bowl wins. Played horrible against BYU. Drifts in and out of the pocket. Holds onto the ball too long. Can only hit wide open receivers. Rented out a strip club for 2 days before the bowl game. The whole team crapped to bed. I don't want to hear that it's just all positive for Shedeur because it's not. And the same thing with Shiloh. I'm not trying to get way, off topic. But just because the father was game and Dion was game, you put the best player in front of him and Dion stepped up his game and was ready to go. That's not what his children do at all. And Shedeur is more competitive than Shiloh, and I don't even put them as great competitors. I don't see it. Great competitors put their craft first. It comes before anything. Any social media, gold chains, Bentleys, All I'm saying, I don't care about if he buys those things. But to me, it just seems like a distraction. You rent out a strip club for 2 days before your bowl game and can't figure out why your team crapped the bed? That sounds like a guy that puts football first. Sounds like a guy that, to me, that doesn't have his priorities in order. Now, when the bowl game's over and we win, we got our rings on, and you want to go to the strip club, hey, have fun. Stay there for 5 days. I could care less. But before the game? Really? And that's what this is all going to go back to. Oh, you don't like Shedeur. You don't like he's got his hat on backwards and his gold chain and this. I could care less about it. Nobody wants Shedeur to be more successful than me if he's a Pittsburgh Steeler. I want him to be better than Troy Aikman, Joe Montana, Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts. I want him to be 50,000 times better than those guys. But I just don't see that. And the tape doesn't lie. I'm not lying. I didn't wake up in the morning and say, you know what? Let me take a huge dump on the Sanders family. It's not what happened. I put everybody else's thoughts aside. I watched all 22 film of what's going on, and what I see is not good at all. And I could say this, and then boom, he falls in our lap, and I'd be like, you know what? We don't have any other quarterbacks for the season. I mean, there's a kid from Louisville. There's Jackson Dart. I always think to myself, if Shedeur Sanders played in the SEC, would we even know who he is? If his last name wasn't Sanders and he played in the Southeastern Conference, the best division in college football, he might have been a career back. He might not even stepped on the field ever. And I'm going to end it with this, the most important thing. This is the most important thing. When you get drafted to the NFL, nobody cares about when you were drafted. Yeah, you're going to get a little bit more opportunities if you're a first-round pick because the team's got money in you. But when you get in the locker room with the other players, they don't care that you went to Notre Dame. They don't care you went to Georgia. They don't care who your dad is. They don't care that they came from a Division II school. It's all about competition. The strong will survive. And the Sanders, Shiloh, and Shedeur, never once, since they started playing football, since they were 6 years old, even up to college, did they ever have to compete and fight for their job like their life depends on it. No, they never have. Before the season, they are penciled in as the starter. Now, Shedeur played for his father his whole career. Shiloh, he had like 1 year at South Carolina, and guess what? He only played in like 4 to 6 games. He didn't start. So how are Shiloh and Shedeur, especially Shedeur, because that's who the video is about, how is he going to handle being in the locker room with other predators who want it more than him or just as much as him and are dying to be that guy, who put food on their table from the NFL, that where it's not going to be handed to them by their dad? I mean, that's a huge intangible that nobody talks about. The Sanders children will now have to fight for their jobs because their dad is not coaching them. I don't see how that gets overlooked. Steelers have a lot of things to work out before draft day. This is not going to be, it should be an easy draft. It should. But if Shedeur falls in their lap, all hell is going to break loose.